Hi friends, and welcome into our very first episode of Cousins Talk Crime. I'm Emily.
And I am Whitney.
And we are super excited to have you all with us.
And bear with us because it's the first episode, so we don't really know how it's going to go.
Whitney, have you been keeping up with the Riley Strain case that's been in the news?
I have been following it on TikTok and watching like different clips of it, and I did not know till you told me earlier that they found him.
Yeah, he was found this morning, which honestly can be a good thing so his parents don't have to wonder forever where he is.
I was watching clips of his mom, and it broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I know it says on here that no foul play is suspected, but I don't know. It's just kind of crazy, the whole circumstances surrounding it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe more will come out about it.
Yeah. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, there's more about it. But as of right now, he was just found this morning. And no foul play is suspected. So I guess that's a good thing. And his parents can lay him to rest and go on about recovering from that.
Yeah.
So the first story I'm going to be bringing you all is a story that's a little close to home. It's a story about a young girl named Jill Behrman that disappeared in May of 2000. So I want to give you a little background of Jill. Jill Behrman was born on September 17th, 1980 to Eric and Marilyn Beerman. Now, she was born and raised in Indiana with her brother Brian. She also attended Bloomington South High School and graduated with honors in 1999. She received several scholarships, was inducted to the National Honor Society. She also excelled in sports, where she received several awards. Jill was the type of person that was really athletic, really into fitness and wellness. I don't really think there was a sport she didn't play, but I do know that she lettered in volleyball, and she was in a lot of track and field clubs.
Ooh.
She did participate in a number of extracurricular activities like 4-H, Girl Scouts, and the Boys and Girls Club, and her family were very active in church.
Oh, so she did it all.
She did. She did it all. And we're not even done because she did it all. So on top of all of her hobbies, Jill also kept a job in high school. She worked at Dairy Queen, Mr. D's, and Luca's Pizza. And on top of all of that, Jill found it really important to volunteer any extra time that she had. She was a candy striper at the Bloomington Hospital, and she did volunteer in community kitchens and local food banks. So I think it's safe to say that Jill was very active and well-known in her community. And so when Jill's disappearance came about, it was a huge media outpour. When Jill did go to college, she decided to stay close to home and studied business at Indiana University. And from her hobbies, you can probably guess that Jill had a passion for sports and living a healthy lifestyle. She used that passion to land a job at the university's sports and recreation. Like I said, there's no doubt that Jill was well known and she had a lot going for her. So after a little bit of background, I'm going to take you to the day that Jill disappeared. So the day was May 31st, 2000. It was a Wednesday. Jill woke up early like she typically did. And Jill's plans for the day were to go to work at the rec center around 12 o'clock and then meet her dad and grandpa for a late lunch, early dinner around 3 p.m. Now, in the mornings, Jill liked to start her day off with a good exercise. And one of her favorite forms of exercise was riding her bike. When Jill took her bike out, it wasn't for a leisurely ride. She did it to get a good exercise. So that morning around 9 a.m., Jill did hop on her bike and go for a ride. She didn't typically ride in areas that she wasn't comfortable with. And unfortunately, this would be the last time that Jill ever left her home. So Jill was last seen on the corner of Harrell Road and Moffett Lane around 9:30 a.m. This is near the southeastern side of Bloomington. I think we need to keep in mind that the year is 2000. We don't have cell phones in our pockets. We're not texting people all the time. We don't have Facebook, none of that kind of stuff. So when 3 p.m. rolls around and she's not there to meet her dad and grandfather, they don't immediately panic. I think they just assume that she's staying late for work.
Yeah. Who reported her missing? Was it her dad when she didn't show up?
So when she didn't show up to lunch, he didn't think too much about it. I think it was later on that evening when she didn't show back home in the evening time. That's whenever he immediately called the police. They didn't mess around.
So did they live together?
Yeah, she lived with her parents.
Okay.
Yes. And Jill was a really good kid. She's not the type that wouldn't come home in the evenings. So they knew something was wrong. So like I said, later that evening, they did call the police. They didn't really waste any time wondering where she was. So Eric and Marilyn, her parents, they started passing out flyers, working with the members of the community, family, and friends. They also went out and kind of mapped out routes that she could have taken, and they were trying to retrace her steps. Maybe she got into an accident, was in a ditch, and no one saw her. They just tried to go down any road that she might have taken. That day, a jogger discovered a bike in a cornfield. This bike was a Cannondale R500. If you don't know anything about bikes, I didn't know anything about bikes.
Yeah, I don't know nothing about bikes.
But apparently this Cannondale R500 is a very, very expensive exercise bike. It's not something you would typically just see stranded on the side of the road. So the jogger, he didn't think much of it because I don't think he was well educated on bikes. So he took the bike and just decided, well, this is my bike now.
So he got a new bike.
He got a new bike. He went out for a jog and he came home with a bike. What a win. So 2 days later, he saw a news story about Jill and how she was last seen on this specific bike, and he realized pretty quickly that the bike he found was Jill's bike. So he did immediately take it to the police. He didn't try to hide it or anything, which was
that's good.
The noble thing to do.
Right. Just a bike thief.
Just a bike thief. It's fine.
So when they found the bike, then they were probably really starting to worry.
Yes. They were really starting to worry. There's kind of two reasons that they were super worried, because the bike was actually found 10 miles away from where she was last seen, over on the northwest side of Bloomington, over by Ellettsville. And to get to Ellettsville, you have to drive through a lot of traffic. If you are familiar with Bloomington at all, it's very heavy traffic. Her dad was very adamant that Jill never would have rode her bike over there. So in his mind, someone took it there. You know, red flags. Somebody took it there. There's something wrong. The other note to worry about was the fact that it was abandoned. This was a treasured possession of Jill's. Even if she did ride it to Ellettsville, she never would have left it on her own free will. So at this point, the search efforts were really, really intense. They were performing roadblocks. Roadblocks were a way that police would catch anybody on their regular commute and see, did you see anything out of the usual on this day? Just to get people that normally drive that road every single day to see if anything out of the ordinary. So a lot of those were going on, search efforts. And then 3 days after her bike was discovered, they found a digital radio that is believed to be Jill's, was found neatly placed in a parking lot of a Bloomington church. Just neatly placed.
That's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
So what is a digital radio?
So a digital radio, I kind of at first was thinking, like, is it a Walkman?
Yeah.
But I think this is literally just a digital radio. It's just a radio that you plug headphones into.
Oh,
it's not anything that you put a CD or a cassette into.
Okay, that makes
Pretty
sense.
sure. The thing that I thought was weird about the digital radio being found neatly placed in the church, my conspiracy theorist brain is thinking that whoever placed it here is feeling remorse.
Yeah.
That something has happened and they can't possess this radio anymore, so they go take it somewhere where it can be found. And so in my head, it's showing, and it's an admission of guilt. And it's also kind of a bad sign, because if someone's feeling guilty about something, then what happened?
Right. How far away was the church from where the bike was found?
I do not know which church it was. I guess I didn't dig that much into that word.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Whoops. But, yeah. So
I was just wondering if it was like across, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No. Apparently, when the radio was found, they saw a dark truck speeding away. So now they're in search of a dark truck. They're stopping anybody that owns a dark truck to get information from them, to interrogate them, see if they know anything about Jill. And whenever the police came out with the fact that it was a dark truck, they received 3,000 tips of people that they know that drive a dark truck that could do something like this. Now, a huge tip came in 2 weeks after Jill's disappearance. And this was an 18-year-old woman in Ellettsville. And she claimed that a man in a dark pickup truck tried abducting her, but she was able to break free and get out of there. I don't think she got any kind of look at the guy, because I don't think anything came of this at all. But they're thinking that what happened to that girl in Ellettsville is connected to what happened to Jill.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was another attempted abduction that they think could be related. And this happened in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Now, for reference, Bowling Green, Kentucky is 3.5 hours away from Bloomington. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. Now, this person struck a female cyclist with their truck, and then they tried dragging them into their truck while they were down. Now, there was luckily a witness there that chased him off.
So it was another biker.
Yeah, this one was another cyclist. So we're feeling that maybe they're targeting people on bikes. Now, the witness that did save this female cyclist was able to give a composite sketch of the person that did this. Now, that composite sketch was released and put on Jill's missing posters, just in hopes that someone in the Bloomington-Ellettsville area would be able to recognize him. However, I don't think anything came from this either. Unfortunately, time is just going by and they're not really getting anywhere. And also at this time, police have a theory that Jill was involved in a hit-and-run accident and someone just freaked out and hit her body somewhere. Now, the only thing that's kind of stopping that theory is that Jill's bike wasn't damaged, really. Yeah. So they're thinking if she did get in a hit-and-run accident enough to kill her, the bike would have been damaged.
Right.
So now they're speculating that maybe she was taking a break off of her bike and got struck. Yeah. Or she was standing beside her bike, fixing something on it, and got struck. Now, the information I'm going to talk about here I got from the Herald-Times. Okay. Which is a very well-known newspaper. And so every night while Jill was missing, her parents would light a candle on their front porch, and this was a symbol to light the way for Jill. And there were times where the Beermans had to be out of town, and her neighbors would make sure that the candle was lit always, just in case Jill did make it home while they were gone. The First United Methodist Church in Bloomington, which is the church that Jill and her family went to, they also lit a candle for Jill every Sunday. And Jill's father, Eric, he did state for the Herald-Times about how sad it was at church. Yeah. It was just a constant reminder that Jill is gone. You know, he's happy that they're doing this, really, but it's hurting him at the same time. And you're seeing all the families around you that are together. Yeah. They're intact, and then you just, like I said, you've got the constant reminder that Jill's not there with you.
And the not knowing of where she is. Yeah.
The not knowing would have to be torture. I mean, I do not have children. Yeah. But I just know it would have to be torture.
Yeah, that would be the worst feeling in the world.
And we all know the longer a case goes, the colder it gets. So a year goes by. There's not been much headway on Jill. But her parents never lose hope. Throughout that year, they're searching, they're spreading the word, they're holding vigils. They're making sure that Jill's story never goes out of the media. Jill's story was featured on America's Most Wanted. Her face was on the cover of Time magazine. And she was on some other well-known TV shows, her story was. So apparently, as early as June of 2000, so she went missing on May 31st, 2000. June is literally the next day.
Yeah.
So as early as the month of June, there were 3 suspects. And their names were Wendy Owings, Uriah Klaus, and Alicia Evans. These 3 were apparently telling people that they killed Jill.
Did they have a reasoning for it? Did they know her or?
No. They were just confessing, but the police can't really do a lot with that. But they were getting a lot of tips. Uriah drove a dark truck, and they were telling people that they did it. So the police in this, it's almost 2 years before we get a confession. But in that 2 years, they try to get evidence. They try to interview people that would know anything. And they try to just interrogate these 3 as much as they absolutely can. And on March 22nd, 2002, which is almost 2 years after Jill disappeared, we did get a confession from Wendy Owings. Now, these 3, like I said, they were telling people about what they did. And apparently they confessed to 46 individual people. Now, only 22 of the 46 actually came forward, but 4 of those people said that Wendy confessed, 5 of those people said Uriah confessed, and 13 of those people said Alicia confessed. I don't know why they were talking about it. If you're trying to get away with murder.
Why are you telling everybody?
Drug addicts.
So, do they say they were all together? They did it as a group?
Yes, they did it as a group.
Now, were they giving details of what they did when they were talking about it?
I think they were giving details to people, maybe not complete details. But I will go ahead and give you Wendy Owings' confession.
Okay.
So this is the confession of Jill Behrman's murder. Owings told police that the 3 of them were driving around the south side of Bloomington, and they were smoking crack, cocaine, and drinking beer.
Now, was this in the morning? So they just woke up and...
They probably never slept.
Yeah, true. They're probably just up.
Probably just... They don't know what day it is, where they're at. And according to the confession, Uriah took his eyes off the road to watch Alicia struggle injecting herself with something, and they heard a bump.
Oh my gosh.
According to them, they thought they hit a dog. And so Uriah got out of the truck just to kind of pull the dog on the side of the road. And then he was a little annoyed when he realized he hit a person.
So what did they do next?
He's annoyed that he hit a person. Oh, what a buzzkill,
Right, that ruined his day.
Yeah, that ruined his day. Anyway, they confessed that Jill was then wrapped in a plastic sheet, and they used bungee cords to tie her up. And then they placed her in the back of their truck with her bike, and they started driving around Bloomington looking for a place to hide her body. They did decide on a place called Salt Creek, which is kind of outside of Bloomington. And they were going to use that to dump Jill's body. Now, before dumping her body, Owings said that they took turns stabbing her. I don't know if that means, did she die on impact?
Right.
And then you were just stabbing her for fun? Did she not die? And then you just wanted to stab her to...
It's crazy to me that it was a supposedly accident, and then they're all like, let's take turns stabbing her before we dump her body.
Yeah. It is. It's weird.
Drugs will do that too, I guess.
Yeah, drugs. Drugs are not good. No. So, obviously, this resulted in a massive search of Salt Creek. And unfortunately, the search was cut short because at that time it was springtime and there was a lot of flooding.
Yeah.
So they did have to stop the search and resume back in July and August. So they did recover a large sheet of industrial plastic, which is what they claim they wrapped Jill in. And on September 9th, 2002, a large portion of Salt Creek was actually drained in effort to find her body. I think I read that it was 100 million gallons of water that they drained out of there to find her body. Another sheet of plastic was recovered, and bungee cords and a knife. So all of that is consistent with the confession,
story, yeah.
yes. And unfortunately, the search did end without recovering her body. They looked and looked, and her body was not there.
So they found everything but the
They
body.
found everything but the body. So they did not find Jill's body. So they immediately take those three and they say, hey, we're going to give you guys some polygraph exams because you lied to us. She's not there. And so during the polygraph exams, Wendy Owings was found to be truthful in her involvement. However, Uriah and Alicia showed signs of deception. So something in this story is not true.
Right.
Now, Wendy, she passed a polygraph, but Uriah and Alicia didn't. So I'm not sure
Right.
if Wendy was just better at lying or what. But Uriah and Alicia showed signs of deception. So something about their story wasn't true. Later, Wendy's recanted her confession, and the three were not charged of anything. Owings' confession did keep the investigation off track for a long, long time. It was not until December of 2002 that investigators publicly acknowledged the fact that Jill was probably dead. That's almost 2.5 years, or about 2.5 years after she disappeared.
Yeah.
Now, in March of 2003, a hunter and his son stumbled upon human skeletal remains in Morgan County, which is north over, it's up by Martinsville, if you know where Martinsville is. So police didn't believe that these were Jill's remains because it was farther than they thought that she would have been.
Right.
However, dental records did prove them wrong, and that was Jill. So Jill's remains were found. At this point, it was just skeletal remains. There was nothing that they could really go by.
Yeah.
It was pure fate that those guys found her that day.
Yeah.
It was in a very thick section of the woods, and it was all covered with thorns and briars and stuff. Now, almost immediately after the discovery of Jill's remains, Wendy's confession was declared a complete fabrication. And the reason it was declared a complete fabrication is because they determined the cause of death, and it was a shotgun wound to the back of the head. Yeah. Which is not what anybody thought.
No.
Everyone really thought that it was a hit-and-run accident.
Right.
Now, despite eyewitnesses and physical evidence tying Wendy, Uriah, and Alicia to the crime, Wendy recanted and said her confession came from pressure of investigators. Now, I don't like that because there was evidence found in Salt Creek.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that get there? Do you think it's just a coincidence they found the tarp, bungee cords, and a knife? Or do you think they planted their own evidence for a crime they didn't even commit?
I think they definitely are the ones that put those things there for whatever reason. I don't know what they used them for or what, you know what I mean? If it had to deal with her or if they were just, she had known they had done that or I don't know.
I don't know either. Because I just don't think you can say that your confession came from pressure of investigators.
Right.
And then you go and plant your own evidence in Salt Creek.
Right.
Because that stuff's not there for a coincidence. They put them there. Whether they
and
actually...
when you're on drugs and stuff like that, if they were, I don't know if they're the ones who did it, but maybe she thought that's where the body was, and then one of the guys actually took the body somewhere else.
Yeah.
And in her drunken haze, she just remembers having that stuff and being thrown in there.
True. Yeah. Being under the influence can do a lot of things to your mind and your memory.
Right.
It really bugs me that they get off because
Right.
it was pressure of investigators. But I just don't see how it can be pressure of investigators if there's evidence.
Right.
If you planted your own evidence, that's not pressure. A police officer didn't hold a gun to your head and say, hey, plant this evidence so we can find it.
Right. And yeah, she didn't get that lucky where she hit everything they'd find on there.
Yeah,
That's
no.
not a coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence. According to investigators, Jill was stripped of her clothes and then shot in the back of the head execution style with a 12-gauge double-barrel shotgun. Now, since her body is just skeletal remains, they cannot physically, without a doubt, say that she was sexually assaulted, but they can say that there were no clothes at the crime scene. Mm-hmm. So she was stripped of any clothes that she was wearing and shot in the back of the head. So whoever did kill Jill did leave behind the spent ammunition and left a piece of the shotgun behind. I believe it was called a forearm. I'm not familiar with guns, but it was a piece of the gun that got left behind. I don't know why it got left behind. Right. If it's something that easily falls off of a gun, whatever. This discovery did blow a massive hole in the investigation because up until this point, they believed she was struck by a vehicle. Up until now, the FBI had been involved. They did step aside at this point, and they gave the case to an investigator in Morgan County. Now, while Jill's parents are surely devastated at the loss of their child, I'm sure it comes with a bit of relief as well. Yeah. You can lay her to rest. You know now.
Yeah, have some closure.
You can have some closure. And you can celebrate her life and honor her. And Jill's remain surfacing did also help the investigation because now we have a cause of death and we have a murder weapon. Yeah. So now, March of 2003, an arrest was not made for someone that they suspected killed her until April of 2006.
Oh, so about 6 years later.
Yeah, 6 years after her disappearance. Yeah. Almost 6 years after her disappearance. They finally arrested someone that they believe did this. And this was an Ellettsville man. His name was John Meyers. And let me tell you his background. So at the time of Jill's disappearance, he was 24 years old. And Jill was 19. So, and he did drive a red Honda car, which is not at all what we're thinking.
Right.
This person should be driving. We are thinking dark truck.
Yeah.
But John is a single father. His daughter is 4 years old at this time. His ex-wife and mother of his child did abandon her child and moved to Pennsylvania to get away from him. Apparently, she was scared for her life and felt that that was the only way that she could get away from him. Mm-hmm. Now, 1 month before Jill went missing, John and his girlfriend broke up. She filed a restraining order against him and claimed that he had stripped her of her clothes, confined her inside of his mobile home for 2 days.
So he's a psychopath.
That's what the picture is painting, is that he is definitely a psychopath. She did also claim that during this time, he drug her through broken glass, threatened to rape and kill her, was taking pictures of her, and all of this was happening with his 4-year-old daughter present.
I just don't know why the mom didn't take the daughter with her when she left.
I know. I mean, he's got to be that scary that you would abandon your child. Right?
I mean,
I don't know how you could do it.
No. I could never.
This was the first time he was formally accused of any kind of violent act towards a woman. But it would not be the last. So there is still a lot of speculation of whether or not John is the person that did this. So I'll give you as many details as I can about him, and afterwards we'll discuss what your opinions are. Okay. So Jill's bike was found about a mile from his house. So he was on vacation from work the week that Jill disappeared. Okay. So he doesn't have any kind of alibi where anybody can say that he really was out of place.
Right.
On the day she disappeared, neighbors reported John's windows being covered up. We're imagining maybe he did get Jill parked in the back, brought her into the house, and who knows what happened. He was also reported being hysterical that day and talked about leaving town. From people that interacted with him, he was being very strange that day. And a few days after her disappearance, he told his aunt that he was afraid that people would think he did it. He got really obsessed with Jill's case. Really obsessed that police were going to think that he did it.
Who was he telling that to?
Well, this time he told his aunt, but there were a few other people that said that he was talking about these things. I don't know why he's that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not special.
Right.
If you really don't have anything to do with it, the cops probably aren't going to suspect you.
Unless there's a reason.
Yeah. So.
And unless you know they have a reason.
Yeah. And he was also afraid of roadblocks, like I had mentioned earlier. He was scared to death that the police were going to stop him and talk to him and ask him any questions. If he really did commit the crime, I just don't think that he would know what to say, if he would be able to hold it together.
Yeah.
So he was scared to death of that. And in August of 2000, John's brother noticed that the 12-gauge shotgun that he kept at his parents' house was missing. He has no idea where it went, who took it.
So did the police make that public about the shotgun or no? Do you know?
At that time, no.
No.
All this kind of stuff came out after the fact. The police investigating John were very, very secretive.
Yeah.
I think they had the suspicion that John was the type that would either run or he would commit suicide if he did it.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to keep it very under wraps.
Yeah. Usually they don't put out a lot of information if it's ongoing.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the public to know something, so that way they could know if the killer really did it or not.
Yeah. When the public did find out about it, they had no idea who John was.
Yeah.
They never knew he was a suspect, nothing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit, but his stuff is just kind of all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
In the year 2000, John's dad, which was actually a former deputy sheriff, lost his battle to cancer, and his cousin committed suicide in jail where he was being held on burglary charges. So it was kind of a rough year for John as well, emotionally. During the time in between Jill's disappearance and the end of 2000, John was arrested several times. He's been in and out of jail. He's not your star student. He's not someone that came to be a surprise to the police.
Yeah.
So during this time, he was arrested on intimidation, battery, theft, and receiving stolen property. 2 women also received protective orders due to run-ins with John. John also got into altercations with his own family and threatened his mother. He got into a fight with her, physically knocking her down and drawing blood. Gosh. And the sad thing is his mom is his biggest supporter. His only supporter.
Yeah.
And he's hurting her too.
Yeah. That's... Men that can do that to their own moms is crazy.
Yeah, and his dad, that was on just his last couple months of life. He was pushing, intimidating, and trying to hurt him as well when he was trying to call the police. Fear that his wife was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So apparently at that time he got really hysterical and was looking for guns in the house. Who knows what he would have done if he found a gun. 10 days later he was arrested for that altercation. And he got a no contact order from his parents. But that was quickly removed because John's dad was just in his last couple months of life, and so they didn't want to have no contact with him.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. John found religion in jail, like a lot do. And in October of 2000, he pled guilty to misdemeanor battery and received a 60-day jail sentence and 1-year probation. Now, I will say, I feel like this happens a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Repeat offenders just... I feel like their sentences just get more lax as it goes.
Right.
I don't get it.
And they get good behavior, then they get out, and then they do it again.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
Like, they're going to do it again. Why are you letting them out? Make them spend their full time.
Right.
So in June of 2001, another woman sought a protective order against him where he forcibly entered her home, wouldn't leave. In December of 2001, police obtained a search warrant because John's employer suspected he was stealing furniture. He worked at a furniture store at that time. And his former boss actually went and peeked in his windows and saw all the furniture that they were missing from the store. It was about $8,000 worth.
Oh
So he went back to jail for that. In April of 2002, he pled guilty to receiving stolen property, and his 2-year sentence was suspended and given 4 years probation. What does probation even do? I've never been on it.
Right.
I don't even know what it does. Obviously, it doesn't do much.
No.
I think you just got to go in like once a month, and I don't know what it does.
I think there's different kinds, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. I don't think you have to do anything major.
Yeah. Now, this is the last bit of trouble that he really got into before he was arrested for Jill's murder. But in November 2004, John called his grandmother and gave what seems like a partial confession. He told her that if she knew or if the authorities knew what was on his mind, he would be in prison the rest of his life. And he also claimed that his father knew what terrible thing he did, and he took it to his grave.
Wow.
Yeah. And he did tell her that he wishes he wasn't a bad person and wishes he didn't do bad things. I feel like that kind of reverts back to what I was thinking way back with that digital radio at the church. I feel like whoever did this to Jill has remorse.
Yeah, like felt bad afterwards.
And I think this guy's a psychopath. Mm-hmm. But I also think that I don't think he wants to be the way that he is, and he is. So I think he has remorse about what he did to Jill. Mm-hmm. Maybe later on he doesn't.
Right.
But in the moment, I think he did. At a different time, he had one of the times that he was in jail, he had talked to a cellmate about this case and said that if she, referring to Jill, hadn't said anything, that this never would have happened. So who knows what could have happened. But there was another time he, quote unquote, bet somebody that her body would be found in the woods, which I think is a weird bet to make, especially
when she was found in the woods.
Yeah. But especially in a place like Bloomington, Lake Monroe is a huge lake.
Right.
I would feel like if you were going to try to hide a body for no one to find,
right,
it would be in Lake Monroe.
Right.
So the fact that you're betting people that it's found in the woods sort of makes me feel like you may be involved.
Yeah.
And he did also bring up in casual conversation that if he were to ever need to hide a dead body, he would hide it in a certain wooded area that he used to hunt in, which is very, very close to where Jill was found. John's ex-girlfriend, they took her out to where Jill was found, and she said that she had been out there with him before. So we all know that this is an area that John is familiar with. Yeah. John is familiar with this area.
Now, has he ever confessed?
No.
No.
Does
he still remain innocent?
Yes, he has maintained his innocence this whole time. He has never said that he did this. He told a corrections officer that he felt sorry for what happened to Jill and even gave a list of good areas to search. And one of the areas on the list is where Jill was found. I know.
So, what evidence did they actually have on him? You don't know.
Nothing.
Nothing.
They have no evidence. All they have is this hearsay stuff. All they have is, this is what John said, this is what John did. Yeah.
The bike, though, being so close to his house and the body being found where he's been before, I just don't see that being a coincidence.
I don't think so either. Now, in May of 2003, the investigator on the case organized every single scrap piece of information and evidence that they had on Jill's case, and they sent it into something called the Middle Atlantic Great Lakes Organized Crime Law Enforcement Network. It's a mouthful.
That's a lot.
It is. They usually call it by its acronym. Now, this is a group that uses advanced techniques to read through interviews and look through evidence, and they kind of make a profile of what the killer would look like.
Yeah.
In their lifestyle and all this kind of stuff. Now, they looked through more than 5,000 pages of interview transcripts, evidence, and reports. It took over a year, but they were able to paint a concise picture of their alleged suspect. In May of 2004, a 77-page PowerPoint report came, complete with 110 visual slides. And this led suspicion to a familiar name, John Meyers.
So he fit the profile?
Yes, he fit the profile. He had been in and out of jail all this time. They can prove that he wasn't in jail at the time that Jill disappeared.
He didn't have an alibi.
He'd been
to where her body was found.
Yeah, and he had a lot of people saying that he was crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah. And the fact that he had stripped girls in his life down before and held them captive and just shows what he's capable of, that he could do something to that magnitude.
Yes. And I think that's the most damning thing is that he's done all these things.
Yeah.
Now, in March of 2005, Meyers' aunt and uncle, they're getting some news about the case. They're suspecting John. Now, Meyers' aunt and uncle call police and say, hey, John sold us these guns. Do you want them? Police say, heck yeah, I want those. So they drive down to Tennessee where the aunt and uncle live, and they're hoping to find the murder weapon. So John sold them 3 separate weapons. One of them was a .33 caliber pistol and then 2 12-gauge shotguns. Now, when they get there to retrieve the shotguns, unfortunately, neither of them could have been the murder weapon. They were both intact and they weren't double-barrel shotguns, as they said would have been what killed Jill.
Do they know if he ever owned one like that?
No.
No, they don't.
Nope. So John was arrested in March of 2005 in correlation to the stolen guns that he sold his aunt and uncle. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 3 years in jail. All but 6 months were suspended. And his mother paid his bail and he was back on the street. And like I said, I will never understand.
Right.
He gets 3 years. Make him go in there for 3 years.
Right.
He's habitual offender.
Yeah.
Why do you give him
keep letting him
only
go in
6
and out,
months?
in and out, yeah. He's obviously not learning anything from his time spent there.
Yeah. They need to set bigger bonds. They need to harsher sentences. It's just stupid that people like him just can continue to keep. Anyway. Later that year, John filed a protective order against his girlfriend at the time. She apparently hit him with her car, drove around with him on the hood, and then threw him from the car. Which seems much deserved. Yeah. He probably deserved it.
Yeah.
Karma, maybe.
Yeah. I like envisioning that.
I like envisioning it, too. So
did she get convicted of that? Did she get in trouble? She probably got a longer sentence than he ever did. She's probably still in jail.
She's probably still in jail. You're going to prison for life.
Right.
The judge did grant this order. It was probably good for her anyway.
Yeah, she probably needed to stay away from it.
In October of 2005, trouble with Meyers' grandmother started. His 78-year-old grandmother called police suspecting he was breaking into her home while she was visiting her husband in the nursing home. So, grandma's out visiting grandpa in the nursing home. I'm going to go in and steal some stuff.
What was he getting? Does she know?
Yeah, she says that she was missing precious family heirloom jewelry that, like, her grandmother gave her.
He was probably, like, pawning it off.
Yeah, very valuable jewelry. She did claim that he had been harassing and intimidating her, but she was afraid to go to police because she was scared he was going to retaliate.
Yeah.
Grandma also stated that she cared for John's daughter while he was in jail, and the daughter was always afraid to go back to Dad. I know.
I almost forget he even had a kid the way he acts.
I know. The investigator said that John's grandmother seemed genuinely terrified of the man. Patrols did start staying outside of Grandma's house because they were afraid for her safety.
Yeah.
Now, 5 months later, in March of 2006, 6 Monroe County grand jurors listened to testimony from 90 witnesses behind closed doors. After nearly a month, John was indicted for the murder of Jill Beerman. Like I said earlier, the investigation was very secretive, and the public didn't know much about Meyers' connection to Beerman's murder. Now, prosecutors described the case as largely circumstantial. They knew that it was going to be a hard case to win because they didn't really have any evidence on him.
Yeah.
Now, more than 200 witnesses were expected to testify at the trial. There was a witness that did come forward and say they saw a red car, which is what he was driving at the time.
Yeah.
Off the side of the road that she was last seen on with its blinker on. And another witness did claim that they saw a woman in the front passenger seat of this car, and they looked like Jill. So I'm trying to decide, did she have a flat tire and he picked her up? I'm just trying to wonder why Jill would have gotten into his car willingly. Because I'm thinking if someone saw her in the front seat, she had gotten into the car willingly. Did he come across as not?
I don't know if it's morning and no one's out and he has that 12 gauge shotgun. Mm-hmm. You know, she might have been like, okay, I'll get in, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot of things we don't know.
You probably, because we don't really know this, but did they process that car? Did they find anything of Jill on it or no?
No, not that I found anywhere.
Right, you said it's just all circumstantial.
So during the whole thing, John maintained his innocence, told investigators that these conversations about Jill's disappearance never happened, like he was never obsessed with it. He wasn't talking about it. None of this happened, even though everyone's saying it did, which is a little fishy.
Yeah.
Now, the prosecution claimed that he had been angered by his recent breakup and then abducted and killed Jill. Despite any physical evidence or eyewitnesses that directly linked him to the crime, he was found guilty and sentenced to 65 years in prison.
Dang. On hearsay alone.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
It is bizarre. Because whether or not you have a feeling and you think that he did it, I do not know how a jury of 12 people all can say that he did it.
Right.
I mean, Casey Anthony
They had to have a lot of word by word. You know, I feel like maybe they didn't release all the conversation they had with the witnesses that only he could have. You know what I mean? Maybe known.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like Casey Anthony was found innocent on more stuff.
Right.
Against her than him. I don't know.
I feel like it's all in the public eye, too. Like, this guy on paper looks like a criminal, you know? I mean, he is. But it's probably easier to convict someone like him than this girl with, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but I would have convicted her if I was on the jury, but.
Yeah, I think everybody but that jury
thought
she was guilty would have convicted her.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's the whole point of the justice system is we have to know without a doubt that this guy did it. And without any physical evidence, I don't know how. Mm-hmm. I don't know how. And it's not that I think that he didn't do it. Yeah. I just don't know how he got convicted.
I agree with you.
Now, it has been suggested that John is innocent due to a Russian justice. His defense lawyer didn't put forth any effort. It is a well-known fact that his defense lawyer did not do anything. During the trial, the prosecution would come out with stuff like Jill was raped and this and that, but there's no physical evidence that Jill was raped. And in a moment like that, a defense lawyer should say, objection. Yeah. Like, you're not allowed to talk about that. It's not true.
Yeah.
We don't know that that's true. He never tried to object or defend John in any way.
Yeah, that's not good.
That is probably the main reason why John was found guilty, because his defense lawyer didn't do his job.
Yeah.
His verdict was 65 years, and with a small town murder like this, the sources are limited, so I had a difficult time finding a lot of information. And I feel like there had to have been more evidence than I found for him to have been found guilty, kind of like what you had said. Because if we are going to convict people for what people are saying, then why were Uriah and Wendy and Alicia never convicted? I mean, they had evidence.
Yeah.
They had 46 people.
Yeah.
Saying that they said that they did it. So why weren't they convicted? Right. or even tried.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm thinking there's that he said that only the killer probably could have known, you know?
Yeah. John did appeal the verdict in the Indiana State Supreme Court. In November of 2015, his conviction was upheld. So this has been just as recent as 2021, I believe. So he's still trying to get out of prison.
Yeah.
In October of 2019, a federal court vacated Meyers' conviction, claiming that his legal counsel was ineffective. Now, from what I have read online, when someone's conviction is vacated, it means you just go back to trial. It's like your first trial never happened. They'll bring all the evidence back, and you'll just be retried.
I just learned something new.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant, so I wanted to look it up.
So is that happening now? Did that happen?
It was scheduled to happen. However, in August of 2020, a ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit reversed the decision. The three-judge panel determined that while the district court was correct about his legal counsel, the jury's verdict was the proper outcome based on the state's case against him. So apparently those three judges looked at all the evidence against him and said he's guilty.
They thought
There's no point of retrying him. And as a result, his conviction was upheld. And in April 2021, the U.S. Supreme Court denied a petition to review his case. Now, Jill's family today, her mother is very active in Indiana University. I actually did find her on Facebook. She's very active, very, very sweet, it seems. Indiana University hosts their only color run in honor of Jill. They hold a Jill Behrman Color the Campus 5K every spring.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Last time I checked the website, the registration wasn't up yet, but I thought it might be something I might go to.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I might go to it this year. Yeah. And the proceeds for this event go to Jill Behrman's Emerging Leader Scholarship, personal safety workshops, and campus recreational sports programs for IUB students.
Well, that's cool.
And that is the case of Jill Behrman.
You did really good.
Thank you. She seemed like a really sweet girl, and her case has been drug out for 20-some years now.
Especially when you have someone keep trying to appeal.
And I still don't know how I feel about him being convicted. I really don't.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm glad her parents have someone that got convicted for it.
Right.
And they can have that closure.
Thank you for joining us on our first episode of Cousins Talk Crime. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of what I'm going to be talking about next week. I am going to be talking about the Marina Bolter case. It is a young girl who went missing from Bloomfield, Indiana, and I cannot wait to fill you guys on the details next week.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.